Gentlemen, really excited to welcome on the Good Vibes Club. If you're not familiar with Ty and Chris, I don't know if you've not been paying attention, because before the past 24 hours when the timeline was all Laudio, Good Vibes Club has had an unbelievable run. Forget about the floor price. Let's just talk about the vibes. The timeline's filled with them. People are liking them. We're seeing massive sales. We're seeing kindness where Dort, our guy Dort, our good friend Dort, your good friend Dort, is getting a little bit of like a payout from a large sale because he's just being a good community member. So, gentlemen, before we get into anything, how are you feeling on this wonderful Friday morning?
Dude, thank you guys so much for having us on. We're feeling amazing. It's been a pretty wild last 24 hours with our highest ever sale and also with OpenSea partnership news finally dropping. That's been kind of in the works for a little while. So it's been a whirlwind. It's been fantastic. And honestly, that moment that you just described with Dort and this sort of like organic, give back to the community that I believe is what embodies what our community aims to be about and aims to push, was the coolest part. Like, it was so cool to see that moment just happen and transpire, where essentially the seller of the one-of-one Vibe Foot gave a small percentage to Dort because he secured the Twitter handle and the social handles for Vibe Foot and gave him over for free, essentially. That was so cool. That was what ultimately GVC is all about. It's all about, authentic positivity and authentic community. So to see that, it was fantastic, man. And it's been a wild ride.
It's almost as if there's a culture of good vibes or something.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's been great.
Can you talk a little bit about that though? Because there is this weird magnetism people have towards the collection. And I have my thoughts on it, but I want to get yours. Cause I'll give you an example. I had a rare I had gotten way back when. I sold the rare when everything ran up because I was like, you know what? Like, this is like, I need the money right now. It's a great opportunity. And then what did I do? I immediately bought 2 ones that have the same hair as me on the floor, like the same IRL hair as me or similar hair as me on the floor. And I painstakingly went over traits with my wife and kids until we got the ones. I barely missed out. By the way, there was another one I was looking at and the floor ran up so quickly that I couldn't get the exact one I was looking at after that, but I got 2 more immediately. What do you think is going on there where people like me are like, the second that we are not sitting on one in our wallet, we're like, that's a thing I still want to be a part of. Like, and not only that, we go trait shopping. I did it with my family. I did it with my wife. And like, what do you think that thing is that we're capturing right now?
Do you want to go, Ty, or do you want me to take this?
Yeah, I think also, good morning, guys. I'm so stoked to be on. Yeah, I think really it's a testament to Chris and Dreezy. Like, we spent 3.5 years creating high-end art in 3D at scale. And a large part of that was making sure the collection felt so diverse. And what it really is a collection for collectors. And so, it's something that I didn't expect because I've been staring at it for, years at this point. And then, even myself, I can't stop, looking at, different things in the collection and wanting to build my collection in certain ways. And badges also play a role. But, the level of fidelity in each image and the level of detail down to like the tiny little pins that are placed by hand on all the different shirts and whatnot. It's just so fun to see different people be drawn to different things. And so that's really cool because I myself might be attracted to like, one thing with golds or whatever, whereas Chris is like maybe not as into it as much as me. And that's okay. But it's really cool to see, different people within the community kind of be drawn to different things. And it's been so fun to watch too.
I think that's part of the point. Like, the reason we spent so long creating such a diverse collection is 2 sort of main things. One, that exact point of like something for everyone sort of idea. There's like grayscale, there's highly rainbow, there's golds, there's really everything. And then 2, we wanted to make sure that there is no floor vibey. Like, the curation is so, I guess, like we spent so long on the curation for the purpose of trying to make sure that even like the bottom most vibey or whatever still feels really good, still feels premium, and ultimately still feels like an identity that someone could be really excited to own and to develop themselves. So to see that kind of come to life and to see that happening within the community is great. I mean, I'm also collecting and really, really stoked to collect. And I'm constantly like trying to ask different community members, hey, can I talk to you about a trade here? And they're like, I'm really emotionally attached to this vibey. And as the artist, it's the greatest thing to see because that's what you want. You want to be able to have an identity that people can emotionally connect to, because at the end of the day, that's what the IP and the brand is. It's a brand that is designed to emotionally connect with folks and also champion a message that we think is really, really important.
Can I, okay. So like, you're almost like, you're playing it like very, very cool and saying like, hey, as an artist, you like to see that. Dude, is it just like the coolest thing in the like? Like you
It is. It's
spend
amazing.
so much
It's
time on
amazing.
it. Like I'm sitting here and
Yeah,
I'm stoked.
dude.
Like I'm getting goosebumps hearing it. Like you spent so much time on this, and people like me are like looking at things, and like the second one with like shiny mint hair hits the floor. I'm like, that's not a floor vibe. How do I get that? Like it's gotta be like the coolest thing to be like your artist celebrated.
Dude, it is an unreal feeling, especially because, there were thousands of hours where I was sitting, just in the dark room working at 3 a.m. on like a texture of a shirt, or literally hand positioning like a little pin on like a lapel or something. And so to kind of go from there to now, like where everyone is seeing the art and stoked on it and connecting with it, man, it's honestly the dream. Like this kind of goes back to way back early in your career as an artist. You become an artist because you're really excited to create for the joy of creating. You want to express yourself, right? And then you start to do commercial work as a means to fund that. And so now with this opportunity of Good Vibes Club, it's like we can create and build this IP that we want to build for fun and for the love of it, while also building a sustainable business and then having these other sort of business partnerships that can reinforce the IP and reinforce the brand and ultimately build the business as well as a supplementary thing. So it's really cool to go from like, primarily commercial art to now primarily building your own IP and then using commercial art as a supplementary tool. It's a dream come true, literally.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic too, because I remember having conversations like in like 2022 and like 2023, like, as we're, working on everything, like, dude, do you think people are even going to care? Like, do you think that people are going to notice some of these things? Like, and then to be here, now, and like after, the OpenSea video dropping yesterday, I mean, it's not even been a full 24 hours and it's got over 1 million, views on it. And it's like, it's just so humbling, the market reception that we've had with the community and, the collection itself. But like, there was a time where it was like, do you think people are going to even care? Like, do you think they're going to notice? And so
yeah, Ty's like, stop positioning pins on lapels and can you please get back to the client about this client piece we're working on? I'm like, no.
That's true.
That's amazing. It's so interesting too, because like, and I promise we'll get to the OpenSea video, but I'm so excited about like the direction, because it's like it couldn't have come at a better time. Like the OpenSea video almost came to the same crescendo that the excitement around the Vibe Foot sale and all these other things going on. It's a crazy confluence of things, and I got, if you don't mind giving people like the different things, because like we had Klanos on yesterday, and everything they do is high effort. And
we
then
love Klanos. They're dope.
It's almost like there's this like group of like teams, like you and Klanos fit into this category where it's like everything is high effort. You don't just mail it in on things. And I look at the site and, coming out of the site, there was the Zoom, which I thought was a really cool feature to see the actual details and the scratches in the mask and the hats and things like that. You had, the gallery view. You started putting on badges. Can you talk a little bit about that collector philosophy and going on to it? Because you hit it at a high level. For people who maybe aren't familiar, who are here in the chat today, it's a high effort club about collecting, about togetherness. So talk a little bit about that for those who maybe aren't familiar with it.
Yeah, for sure. Quality is super important to us. And I think that's why we spent so long on the collection, is that we weren't willing to sacrifice the level of quality that we know we're capable of and that we want to uphold in everything that we do. And so with some of those other things, like you mentioned, like badges, some of the site experiences and whatever, they all reinforce this idea of creating like a holistic collector experience, right? Because it's a collection for collectors. It's high-end art at scale in 3D. And so, creating different ways in which people can interact with the IP and build affinity towards it. And, people, become emotionally attached, I myself included, to some of their vibes and whatnot. And creating like a system around that reinforces that emotional connection, that allows people to have fun, and I think like this is the really important thing about NFTs in the space, is that, fun is so important and sometimes it's often forgotten. And so if you can design things around that, it really sets itself up to have like a really interesting dynamic with your community in which everybody can just, vibe out. And I think that's what makes the Discord so much fun. Like I'm in there all day and it's a blast.
Is there pressure that goes along with that to some degree, with like this like hype that you're getting? Like, do you feel like, is it like a combination of excitement and pressure, or is it just like, hey, like full speed ahead, we've got a plan, we're executing, and we let the chips fall where they may? Like, or is there like a, oh God, like, I don't know if we expected it to be this better than we expected, even in our, what's going on here?
For us, I feel like we were kind of built for it. Like we're really used to working on like high end stuff. Like we rebranded Facebook Messenger in 2021, and that was seen by billions of people. So I kind of feel like we were kind of built for this sort of stage in terms of our ability to execute. Like I'll just touch on the team here. Like Ty handling business side of things is insane. It's such a powerhouse like sort of team with Ty and then all of the artists and then myself and then everybody. Like I kind of describe it to people like I feel like if you're able to find the top 1% in their respective niches at what they do and combine them, you're able to like multiply that sort of output of impact like 10 or 20 or 100x. It's just ridiculous. Like the OpenSea video was made with a team. It was a kind of a large team, but each person had like their very specialized role, like the water sim absolute specialist, the transition specialist, the lighting like absolute specialist, right? And so when you take all of those things and you combine them, that's when I think that you're able to create something that's truly great. And so to kind of see that happening is really, really cool to witness the unfolding of that before it. And I'm really, really just grateful to be a part of it.
In that same breath, I also think it's really humbling. Like, sure, yes, like our whole thing is like, we're not going to come out and sell people in the world. Like we're going to underpromise and overdeliver. Like we would rather show you what we can do versus just talk about it all the time. And, obviously there's an element of that that's really important too. But, this whole idea of like show versus tell and, to see the reception that we've had from the wider market so far has just been incredible. Like it's exceeded, obviously you have like a vision for what you want it to be and what you think its potential is. And so, it's exceeded that in a lot of really beautiful ways. And I think that, as much as you're intentional with how you interact with everybody one-on-one within your community. Zane, what up, dude? I saw that earlier and it made me smile.
Zane, let's go.
Yes. I think it just reinforces that where it's like, the main energy is just, people are just stoked and vibing out. And, on the back end, sure, we're shipping badges. Sure, we're doing a million different things, but, we're also working on a massive production that we weren't even able to tell anybody about. And to see that just kind of come out and hit everybody in the face, like from our community that had no idea that we were working on it, it was so sick. Like to be able to be like, hey, we're doing all these other things. We're here every day vibing out, but also like we have the chops in the team, in the infrastructure, in the pipeline in order to do things at a large scale. And, here's an example of it. And so it's really exciting times for us.
That was maybe the thing that I took away from it, which is sort of the counterintuitive takeaway is like, look, I knew you guys were stone cold killers from, I hung out with Chris in Paris. I've talked with you guys, Ty and I are in the DMs. I think we're cut from the same cloth. And it's like, yep. I just like what I think that shows everybody is this is, the video that was kind of considered the standard for videos in Web3 for good video work was the video that we saw from Other Side a few years ago. Yeah. And then OpenSea's had some good ones too, as well, that have come out. But this one just was a beautiful work of art. It featured a lot of community members. Before we get into the video itself, I was going to say, my takeaway is like, if anybody thought you weren't good at executing, I think this is a good show there to say, hey, we can execute a little bit here. And you saw some people in the timeline, I think you saw Clemente being like, oh shit, Good Vibes Club's behind this video. And so I guess like, before we get into that, how does this even, you have Toast, you've obviously got the background, you've got the chops. How does this come to be? How do you connect with OpenSea for the most important launch in the history of OpenSea to create their video? And then, we'll talk about how it became so awesome, but how do you even start that conversation? What happened there? How did that go down?
Yeah. It's funny because we connected one-on-one with Adam Hollander. He's somebody who I absolutely respect and have for a long time. And this was before we started. This was like maybe the first couple of weeks of when we started our like go-to-market before even Mint. This is months and months ago,
like December earlier.
Yeah. And so we had an awesome conversation with him. And then he's somebody whose brain I picked a couple of times throughout the process. And, right after we minted out, I mean, I'm sure you guys remember that day, like, market sentiment was at an all-time low since FTX. And it was just incredible that it even minted out in the way that it did. And, he hit us up like, yo, congratulations. And that was really awesome. But he tossed me in a chat with another person, on his team. And it was the first week that he had started working, at OpenSea. And at that point, it was pretty down low that he was the CMO. And, we made him an honorary OpenSea, PFP'd it. And, production fidelity, within the honorary was nice and whatnot. But we just, the conversation just kind of happened organically. And he was like, you know what, this is, good timing for us to connect because we also have our commercial animation studio. And so, it's interesting, like we've been working with all those brands in Web 2 for years, but, as a Web 3 IP, I think that we're uniquely positioned to help, tell stories within the space that, know and resonate with all the different IPs that are there. Like, how do you create a brand moment for UFD that feels UFD, or Doodles puking into the water with the rainbow puke? Like, looking for different moments as you're trying to architect a larger story while knowing these brands intimately because you've seen them for years and they've done so many incredible things in this space that you love and adore. That's, I think, really important. So like, as a Web3 IP with a commercial animation studio, it's very interesting sort of setup in which like it allows us to supplement on the business side in a way that not only proliferates the IP, but it also enables us to build organically in the right way without needing to extract from people, which is something that we're also sick of seeing, for years on end in the space. And so it happened organically, and it's really exciting because, to be able to like level up the production fidelity across a lot of their other assets in the future, I think it's going to be really exciting for us.
It's such a good, I'm just such a marketing nerd, so I just see the brief from it in my head about how you want to, show that it's the gathering place for the community to, and it's just the way that you did it. It's like, I watched that video and then I back engineer the brief in my head and I'm like, they fucking nailed the brief. So it's really cool to see like that go and kind of like see everything unfold. And I think a lot of people can appreciate it. So how did you make creative decisions about even sort of like individuals you included in there? So like I saw our guy Dort front and center. Again, Dort's one of the things all four people on this chat have in common is Dort is one of our favorite people in the ecosystem. He is literally the definition of what a community member should be in
Not sure
any
if
community.
That, but he's officially been nominated for the mayor of Vibetown this morning. The nominations are in. He got enough.
Let's go.
Yeah, he got enough signatures to get on the ballot, so he's got my vote.
He's on the ballot. But like, how do you
get him on the ballot?
How do you go about that when you're going through to do that? And like, how important was that, I guess, to the process of what you're creating? Because you obviously had like the Doodles puking was like one of my favorite moments. I'm like, what a creative execution of an NFT brand crossing over there. How do you decide like what were you thinking about when you were thinking about including community members? Like what goes in that decision? How do you include to go how do you decide to go so heavy on that versus just being more generic?
Honestly, it was a decision that kind of came from like our relationships and also from wanting to show love to the major projects that have pioneered and trailblazed, right? Like we wanted to make sure that we kind of incorporated like, okay, how can we take a Doodles iconic moment of Hap with the puke and then incorporate that into a motion signature that would make sense? And we thought that this concept of Hap puking into the water and turning it rainbow, and then that is what sort of spawns Unicorn Fart Dust, which is also sort of this rainbow kind of IP. How can we find moments like that throughout the piece and ultimately have like these really nice little key mark moments that call back to each brand? Like, for example, DK has a lot of animation in which his characters are jumping in a very sort of like Super Mario-esque video game kind of style. And so we wanted to make sure, okay, how can we take that and infuse that into the piece? Okay, maybe he's going to jump off this little bubble, and then that bubble will have Doge inside of it, send it slamming to the ground. It'll splash, Chad Doge emits, and whatnot, right? And then we're off to the races. And so the real thinking through us in terms of like our creative concepting was, how can we fit as many moments within the piece like that pay homage to these brands as possible? And so, yeah, to have kind of Dort be the ape and to have all of these other really, really dope moments, it just felt like our knowledge of the space and our sort of experience within the space allowed us to have the context to, make those decisions creatively.
Yeah. And I'll also add too, is like, this was a blitz of a production. Like normally this type of thing would take 6 months. Like that other side video that you mentioned, the studio Buck, which is a studio that Chris used to work at, ironically, with DK back in the day, and a lot of our artist friends. Buck is like the premier motion design studio in Web 2.
They're like the #1 in the world, like in terms of motion design. They're huge.
That team that was on the other side video was probably like around 60 people. It was a very long production. We made this within like 2 months, right? But it would have normally been a lot longer. And so throughout the process, we're making design decisions as we're storyboarding, as we're water simulating some of the different shots and mapping out the transitions and building assets in 2D. And so, we wanted to look for moments in which we can give love to the people that make up the cultural fabric of not just Web3, but also communities. And so Dort, is the embodiment of that. I mean, we all love Dort, and for good reason. I think like he champions what it means to be a good steward of the space. And so, his ape specifically also had a facial rig that would really sell that moment of, because in the video, that's the first time you see a fungible token alongside an NFT IP. When the ape is looking at the ape coin and his mouth opens really wide, and the rig within that face, was just perfect. And so it was kind of an alignment of everything, to come together for that. But within the water bubbles, like we wanted to show love. We tossed you guys in too, and a lot of other folks. And so it was just a really fun exercise because we had to also like hand comp a lot of those bubbles. It was a process for Chris and a lot of the other artists.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for including us. First of all, I think we gave some shout outs or some love on the timeline, but since we got you on video today, like it really did, like, it means a lot. Like I won't speak for Steve, but it is one of those, like, this place gets so focused on the hyper financialized side of things from time to time. And it's like, that's all that matters is what some people think. And it's just like, I didn't receive $1 off that, but it meant more to, like, I was already a big fan. It made me even a bigger fan of you guys, right? It's just like little things like that, acknowledging those that are here. It's just like, I don't want to say it's simple because it does take time. You have to pay attention, but just the little things like that go a long way. And that's, I said earlier, I was saying like this space so much of like about building in public with your community, bringing them along. Yeah, that can be in the form of other airdrops or token drops or fee share, or it could be bringing them along and allowing them to actually participate, including them in your work. And this, I mean, Steve mentioned the Other Side trailer. We saw some really cool stuff from Doodles on this front. This was from my recollection, Steve, this was the first that did that for more than just their own community. Am I accurate? I mean, I guess Other Side trailer did include other communities, but this was just, I think it was a smash hit for all the reasons that have nothing to do with OpenSea's protocol. So to be able to successfully demo or what they're launching and give all these warm and fuzzies, all these good vibes throughout the space at large, just really well done.
Well, just to build a question on that, like from that philosophy, it feels like you guys are very big on. So this is one of my philosophies in life. And this is another reason why I appreciate it, is like the unscalable is scalable in a way, in the sense that you do a lot of one-on-one interaction. There was some great honoraries coming into the collection for some people that I thought you did a great job picking out people like the Deezes and being careful. And I was lucky to get one. I'm sporting it today on the space. And it's like, you asked me specific questions and like, I felt like, oh no, I can't give tons of feedback because that's going to be what, and you're like, and like, Chris is just like, bring all the feedback. We're getting this right for you guys. Like, it was like, almost like I never felt bad doing so. So is that sort of one of your philosophies, is sort of like unscalable, scalable, those one-to-one interactions that become a force multiplier for the company because it's a smaller space? Or I'm curious your philosophy on that.
Absolutely. Honestly, it comes back to like the whole thesis statement of Good Vibes Club is a movement of authentic connection, right? And I think that what that means is having one-of-one connections with as many folks as possible. And so I think that the honoraries are a good example of that, because when we're crafting something for someone, we want them to feel as special as possible, right? Like, the whole idea of making art and creating joy and trying to spread joy through the art that you're creating, I think comes to fruition in a moment like that. And so we really wanted to make sure that we kind of got to know folks as good as we could in as quick a time as possible, so that we could say, hey, what do you really value? Like, okay, you really also value like the Shaka hand because that sort of embodies good vibes. Or, let's include like this really dope, like not novel, but like, book that you had written in the background, right? Like, how can we infuse like what makes it something special to you in this piece of art that we're creating ultimately for you, so that, it brings, I guess, the most joy, because that's at the end of the day what we want to do. And so, that's kind of like the ethos in terms of this one-of-one connection. How can we connect with folks? How can we, genuinely have like a relationship and build a relationship? Because at the end of the day, relationships are powerful. I think that that's sort of the core to the brand. We've seen that with Punk's brunches. Like, those brunches people love because they can connect and network with folks who are really awesome. And so I think that kind of just all ties in together. Relationships are important.
I love that. That is just a very cool, like, I like the way you're thinking about it. And it's like this, this tying to a sense of identity within those relationships and really understanding and listening to someone, because people like to be heard instead of, a lot of brands are like, hey, we sold our community as our community, but like people see their community as a nuisance. And I don't get that impression from y'all. So you do this video. It's awesome. Is there more of a relationship there with OpenSea? If you can talk about that, are there going to be more videos? Because I think like we were talking earlier before you got on here about OpenSea is having a moment and timing matters. And right now they happen to be a time when people pay attention to intention marketing. And by the way, they have a chance to do all these, reward-based activities. I think working with you guys can be cool. So is this a continual relationship? We're going to see more?
Yeah, I mean, the moment that OpenSea had yesterday is a reminder of like, is a reminder that they're like an 800-pound gorilla in the market. Like, they are like a central piece to the cultural fabric of Web3. And that's really what the video was an homage to, all of the different brands and IPs that sort of coalesce and make that up. But, with OpenSea, like we wanted to come out and help them create a brand moment that was really powerful and inclusive for the wider space. And I think that video did that. But in terms of the partnership side, there's a lot of different ways in which, we're talking with them and that we can sort of up the production fidelity across, the branded different assets and whatnot. And so, yes, there's more to come, but like some of those specifics, like, are in the middle of, getting ironed out, and also things that we can't fully speak on. But yeah.
You can't speak on it. I'll speak on it, and just pure speculation from my part, Steve, because you brought it up. I wasn't even thinking that, but you talk about partnerships, collaborations, and owing thanks. I got a little stimmy this past week from SoFon. And I got it because I had good vibes in my wallet. Like anything you could speak to on that, and beyond OpenSea, are there more? Is there anything on that partnership or collaboration, or is that just they reached out and said, "Hey, we love the community. We'd like to reward you"?
For SoFon specifically, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic than, obviously our partnership with OpenSea, but, that was freaking amazing. And we're so grateful for that. And our community is super stoked too. So, it's amazing when you see those sorts of things happen, by nature of just how, powerful and connected your community is with one another. And, you see that begin to proliferate, outside of it, which, is always very special. And so, we have a lot of love for that, and we're super appreciative of it.
I think in terms of like the overall vision, the partnership side of things and being able to bring commercial animation to other brands in Web3 is something that is a part of the vision. I think that we're uniquely positioned in order to kind of partner with other sort of big brands. We've already seen that a little bit with some of our honoraries, like, the Uniswaps and, some of those things. But overall, I think there's a huge opportunity for us to kind of work alongside of some other brands that sort of uplifts the Good Vibes Club IP while, furthering their production fidelity across their different collaterals in ways that are, of course, tasteful. But that is absolutely sort of the vision of GVC, is essentially these various commercial partnerships, OpenSea simply being the first of hopefully many to come.
That's really cool. No, it makes sense. And it's like sort of like this connection. So if you can even be more implicit about it, and you hit it on a little bit at the beginning, but you have Toast. That's obviously not only revenue generation, which is a lot of things that a lot of these brands don't have and say, where's the revenue generation? But it's also an opportunity to show off your chops and actually extend your community, as you've seen in this way, in a very organic way. Then you have Good Vibes Club, which is the community. Can you talk about the tie-in between those two things a little bit deeper and kind of how they interplay or will continue to interplay moving forward? Because, like, I think we were aware of Toast. We talked about it. We've shared some stuff on it. We've done that. I think a lot of people maybe weren't as familiar, and now they're like, oh, okay. So talk about how those two things connect and tie together.
Ultimately, I see Good Vibes Club is the evolution of Toast, right? Because we are Toast. And so what Good Vibes Club is now is, instead of us doing primarily commercial work to sort of fund the business, we're able to partner with various businesses within the Web3 space as Good Vibes Club. We have a royalties element to the smart contract that helps fund that as well. But we're trying to make intelligent business decisions that ultimately allow us to grow in a way that isn't extractive, in a way that is beneficial to the community and ultimately beneficial to us all, because our community is our heart. It's our heartbeat. And so we want to make sure that we're constantly able to bring not only relational value, but actual value to the community in a way that makes sense strategically. So hopefully that answers that a little bit.
Well, in Good Vibes Club, it's, instead of, like Chris, you said, like focusing solely on commercial work, Good Vibes Club is us putting our entire artistic pipeline, our process, all the things that we've built for years, and putting it towards building out Vibe Town. And so as a lifestyle brand, as an IP, that is our primary focus in, commercial partnerships like what you saw with OpenSea. Like, look at the production fidelity in that short film. I mean, applying that to the different storylines and the various components of building out Vibe Town is not only really exciting, but, from the commercial side, it allows us to grow and expand the IP through partnerships, both within Web3 and out of Web3 with our Rolodex of production contracts that we have in Web2. But also supplement the business in a way that is healthy for the ecosystem and, doesn't let us need to like rely on extractive revenue mechanisms, which we've seen play out over and over again. So, I think like the biggest benefit that brands have is time, time to do things right. That's why people raise capital. That's why, people need to build, and robust features and things and products that they're shipping. And so, if you look at what are the ways in which you can give your community and your brand more time to really build in the right way at the foundational level, I see the commercial side of the business, Toast, the commercial animation arm, and the revenue that comes along with that being a very healthy sort of mechanism to feed into that sort of equation, right? And so the two feed off of each other, very nicely, not only from a brand, exposure standpoint, but also from a how do you make the business work?
It's really logical for the two of you, I think, in the sense that, like, you're obviously kick-ass at running a business and that's been very successful and you have those talents, but like, we've talked about like every brand has the chance to sell a community-based brand or have a community-based brand, I should say is a better way to put it, where it's like, we talked about the Starbucks example and it's like Starbucks can only sell so much more coffee, but they can have loyalty and they can have deepening connections and build a community and genuinely find and locate their best fans. And it's like, you have this great B2B business, but it's like, as community builders, like the way you do things just makes sense. You brought in a guy like, Zane early on, you brought in, Mason, who's just an absolute Chad. And it's like, you have this crew of people who make sense to build out a community. So it's like, you have this sort of like, again, this force multiplier towards what you're doing. So I really love that thought process and it makes sense to me. I mean, it's part of the entire thesis of my book is the idea of community-based brands being something you can do with any business. And I think this is almost a case study in any business and how you're pulling it off. And how you intrinsically see those interconnectivities. And it's not like, oh, well, we have this business over there, that's our money generator. And then we have this business over here and it's a different section. They do cross over. So appreciate that thought process. We have a couple questions from our guy, Joey Vowles, who's normally on the show, but I think he's at the gym or at an appointment today. So want to pull those in. And he had some fun questions. He mentioned, look, we've seen a lot of the community members create animations, full body art, etc. Are there plans to release full body art, animations, gifts, so holders can do more with their Good Vibes Club? Because you're a creative bunch. People are already having fun with them. Are you going to stoke those flames? Or are you just going to let the community do it? Any thoughts on that?
I think that it's really important, especially in the early days of the brand, to preserve production fidelity as much as possible. So our vision is to encapsulate all these different identities through like moving storytelling inside of Vibe Town, and that's going to come to fruition very shortly. Additionally, we've seen a lot of community members do their own thing with some AI tools and whatnot, which I think is really cool to kind of see as like its own sort of thing on the side a little bit. But at the heart of the brand, we really believe that if you're able to create a world that people can see the detail of and feel it, like see the little rocks and see little pebbles, you're going to then be able to imagine yourself inside of that world much more strongly, in my opinion. So to create this world and to build this idea of Vibe Town, which is essentially, for those that aren't aware, Vibe Town is, imagine like a Caribbean island. Imagine if New York and Puerto Rico had a baby. There's this huge city in the Caribbean. It's always sunny, probably 75 and clear blue skies almost at all times. There's funk music playing in the streets. People are stoked. People are jamming. People are pumping. So if we can build that out and see community members' identities within these different stories that we tell, I think that would be powerful. Ultimately, stories are what drives art and culture. So to be able to shape these different narratives, to tell these different stories with the community's identities inside of Vibetown is going to be extremely fun. We're super stoked to see that come to life.
That right there is the perfect example of like what storytelling really is. Like anybody who's listening right now
makes me want to move to Vibetown, Steve. Like I'm in the market. I'm not like I got a year. I'm probably moving somewhere.
Come
like,
on down, dude.
Yeah.
Where's the best timeshare presentation I've ever heard? I'm in.
Yeah. It's like you can feel the sun, the warmth of it. It's like a good storyteller can do that. And I think that that's the power of storytelling. And that's why it's not fugazi. Like, it's not like you showed up and you hadn't done this before. When you see a video like that, it's not a coincidence that the OpenSea video did so well in a day when the whole timeline's farming loud, right, myself included, by the way, like hand up, like it's, we're looking for a cook, but like you broke through because of the quality of the storytelling. And even like, I want people to take notes on two things. Not only that, but also when you talked about the rainbow puke and the puke goes into unicorn fart dust, and it's almost like an improv yes and exercise where you build one story along the next. It wasn't just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we just had an explosion here? You thoughtfully built each. Dort's face worked really well for that first moment when you were seeing the ape coin. Like, those details are what separates sort of an artist from a person who's like just creating something. And I think those are important. Which actually kind of dovetails into Joey Val's second question, which was, we've seen Pudgy Penguins, Chimpers, and a few others find success on the other platforms like Instagram, TikTok by creating content with their IP. Good Vibes Club has the type of IP that could excel on those platforms. Are there plans to utilize some of the strategies seen by other NFT projects to proliferate beyond X and Web3 by using maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's YouTube, other things you've used in the past when when you've seen partners like Facebook and others create things?
Absolutely. And I think that that's sort of our bread and butter, and that's definitely within our plans. I think that if you're able to kind of create short form narrative content that people can connect with and then proliferate that along Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, different social platforms, it has a lot of impact for the brand. In terms of like our vision, that's absolutely something that we've talked at length about from the very, very beginning. And we want to be mindful with how and when we roll that out. And so it's still in progress in terms of when that moment is, in terms of like the debut of those socials, but it's absolutely something that is within our plans and, something that we've sort of crafted the brand around in terms of its ideation and its inception from day one.
Well, it's also, Chris, what we've been hired to do for all of these other companies. Like,
Yes.
You go to Google, Made by Google's account, you're going to see our stuff, Oreo campaigns, like you name it, like all the biggest brands in Web 2, that's what they came to us and hired us to do. And so like, it's ironically like, sure, we're very proud of the collection and the art itself as, still images, right? As an art piece. But ironically, like what maybe we're best at and, what we have the production pipeline set up to do specifically is storytelling through motion and specifically creating motifs and brand moments and, mini stories throughout, different sort of world building mechanisms and exercises. Like, all of that takes place on socials. All of that feeds into the evolution of the brand and how do you grow and connect with folks outside of even the bubble that is Web3. And so like, it's great for the proliferation within it. It's also really good for it without it or outside of it. And so it's really exciting to be able to, put our artist resources and our pipeline behind those things. But the way in which we go about that, we obviously want to be intentional about. So the answer is yes, absolutely, soon.
Couple more questions and we'll let you all get out of here. You've been super generous with your time. We're always excited. Never a bad time having you all on a Coffee with Captain. And obviously we'll continue to do this many, many times over. But a question we've gotten like in 4 places in the chat, which we asked you last time, we're going to ask you again. When Good Vibes merch, like whatever the kind is, whether it's a hoodie, whether it's merch from the collection, whether it's whatever, like even the pins, like I'm all over those. Like when Good Vibes merch, because where I think people are lining up, take my money.
NFT
it's
NYC.
coming soon. Yeah. NFT NYC, dude, roll through. We're going to have a really fun time at the Super Gallery if you guys haven't heard, we're going to be having a little event, Super Gallery. I think it's the 27th.
26.
26. Cool.
Yep.
And it's gonna be a really, really great time. So come on through and grab some merch.
I will be there. That will be no doubt about it. And I was glad because when you said 27th, I got scared a little bit, only because I am going to be in NFT. Oh no! I was like, oh no! I thought it was 26, and I was like worried because like I'm getting in. I'm probably going to be in New York, 24th, 25th, 26th. I have to drive like 14 hours on the 28th, so I'm going to be flying out on the 27th. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to miss. So excited for that. That is going to be a fun one. I think people are pumped about that for what you're going to do in NFT NYC, and yeah, Good Vibes merch is going to be a hot item, and it'll be good to see Chris again and actually finally meet Ty in person. It'll be fun times. But
Dude,
I cannot wait,
dude, it's gonna be great. Awesome. Before we let you get out of here, was there anything we didn't ask you or talk about today that we needed to make sure we hit on? Or Cap, I don't know if you have any final like questions as we continue to roll through.
No, well done. Really enjoyed the conversation. I was going to show I pinned this up top, the chart as you were talking through, just like the collectors collecting and the badges. And I just real quickly I just wanted to acknowledge the sales above floor price. This is dated. Carl put this out, I think, a couple weeks ago. But it's not just the 100 ETH sale. It's not just the big sales. It's a third, if not more, of these sales are collectors collecting things they want to collect. It's the aesthetics, it's the badges. And I think, Steve, this is a more important metric than is floor price.
100%. Yeah, and that's something that we talk about amongst ourselves all the time. Like floor price is like, sure, it's there, right? You know, these assets, they have financial value, 100%. But, you know, it's not the metric that is like indicative of the health of your community or the affinity to your brand. And so, but that metric I think is in that, you know, people are going and looking for the things that they want to collect and the things that they're drawn towards from an aesthetic standpoint or maybe an emotional standpoint. Many instances of people saying, oh, this reminds me of my cousin because of this reason or whatever. And, you know, that I think is really cool, especially at the stage in which we are, you know, only being 3 months since mint. And so, you know, it's really exciting to see that. I saw Carl post that and you know, I was like, man, that's really cool because, you know, and this kind of ties back to the OpenSea video as well. You know, there's so many brands in the space that have done so much to push things forward, and they've trailblazed in a lot of ways. Like they've pushed it forward so others could come along, right? And so,
absolutely,
and that's really important to recognize. And so, you know, obviously, it was really cool seeing Good Vibes Club next to, you know, these titans and these legends that have done so much that we admire and respect. But you know, that metric specifically at the stage in which we're at, I think is something that I'm really excited about personally, because I think it means that, you know, the community that we're curating is really special.
I agree. Yeah, that one. And then the other one is, I mean, Steve mentioned there's been multiple people that they'll sell a rare and then they immediately go back and buy a floor or two or multiples on the floor because they're not only not leaving, they want to increase their exposure. And yeah, it's been a while, I think, since we've seen this sort of underlying activity. And it's just the time, like I was saying, I think it was earlier this week, Steve, where I said, if this was like 2021, I feel like NFT stats would have a different Good Vibes chart every day on the timeline because the underlying metrics are so strong. It's just that for whatever reason, the space isn't talking about KPIs on NFT collections as much today as they were maybe a few years ago. But the results, the performance, it really is impressive.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. That means a lot.
Thank you, man. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Well, look, we appreciate you. We'll have you back on many times, I'm sure. This is the first, you know, the second of many, and very much excited to dap you both up in NFT NYC and see you there. And congratulations on everything. Congratulations, especially on that OpenSea partnership, because, you know, it's not just for, you know, selfishly for the space as a whole. The quality stepping up from a major player like OpenSea, because they partner with the right people like you, and they have people like Hollander who are great at spotting what he's great at being like, this is what I want. This is going to be good. Like, let's do this. It really helps move things forward. So thank you for your leadership and looking forward to seeing y'all.
Dude.
Thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate it. And, you know, we'll definitely kick it in New York.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Talk soon, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.